Hello and welcome to another in a series of interviews where we take the opportunity of talking with eminent company members. Now today we're talking with past master Doug Barrow, MBE, who has spent a lifetime in maritime services, and indeed in 2015 he was awarded with an honorary doctorate from Southampton Solent University for his support and promotion of maritime education. More recently, he was recognised with an MBE in the Queen's New Year's Honours List for services to the maritime industry and the City of London. Doug, it's good to see you this morning. Are you keeping well?
I am indeed, thank you, Michael. And yourself, or should I say, Junior Warden?
Well, indeed, this seems to be a title that I've held for a very long time now.
Probably the longest ever in the company, going backwards and forwards.
I can see that you travelled a great deal in your younger life. Perhaps we should start there. Born in Leicester, but I can see that you went overseas and then came back, and then Loughborough and then Ashford. It's all very interesting. Perhaps you'd like to give an overview on all of that.
Well, yes. I mean, I was born on a very wet Monday evening. With mother had been knitting a yellow and brown sweater, a pullover for my father. That good prize me being born. But I was born here in Leicester, and in 1951. 1957, father decided that he would like to do a bit of good for the world, and post-war Britain I don't think was the best place to be. So up sticks on the good ship, the MBE Accra, with mother and myself, and off we sailed to Lagos in Nigeria. And we were there father was there for 7 years. We started in a little village called Ijebode that had no electricity. It was kerosene lights, kerosene fridges, and a wood stove. And then moved around to Ibadan and Kaduna and finished up in Makurdi. But an interesting time. For them and for me. I think mother had to learn to cook on a wood stove at one stage, which wasn't so bright, but there we go. And then eventually I went to boarding school in Loughborough Grammar from 60 to 64. Father then returned back to the UK and gave me the opportunity to go to a day school. I wasn't particularly happy. It wasn't my favourite school, and went to Ashford Grammar. There was a slight disadvantage there that at Loughborough we were about 2 years ahead of a year ahead of what the similar class was doing at Ashford. So yes. I took my foot off the pedal, but I took it off for 2 years and sort of ended up in a retrograde step, managing to scrape 5.0 levels. But it was at that time where I was sort of, education was not the greatest thing on my agenda, that I decided money was. And a chum of mine, his father owned a Fina petrol station in Ashford. And I used to bunk off school and work there for a while. And that was my first real introduction to the oil industry. And when I left school, prior to going to sea, I was lived with my grandmother for a while in Surrey, and worked in a couple of Heron petrol stations. So the contact with the oil industry in the early life remained until I went to sea in '68. But hobbies in those days was keen on playing rugby and enjoying that, I think, and normal boy type things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And who did you go to sea with, Doug?
I went to sea with a company called T&J Brocklebanks, which I think at the time was the oldest cargo carrying company in the world. It was actually joined and became Cunard Brocklebank as I joined them. But I had no idea what I wanted to do. Mother sort of saw an advert in the Daily Express or whatever, and it said go to sea, and I thought T&J Brocklebanks was probably a fishing company off the north of Scotland or something. But anyway, I did as mother said. She loved me so much, she sent me to sea, and off I went, and had 7 years at sea with on dry cargo ships, containers, and then ultimately on tankers, product carriers.
Were you going all the way around the world at that time, Doug, or did they have fixed?
No, they had fixed. I started off at Warsash on Friday the 13th of September. Never forget the day. Warsash is a nautical college, which was then part of Southampton University. It's now part of Southampton University.
Yes.
The runs that we were on was primarily from UK and continent running out to the Red Sea and India. And of course, Suez was shut at the time, so we were going around the Cape off to India, discharging general cargo. And then we were loading in India and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, or Ceylon, I think as it was then. We were loading jute cargoes and some topping off with tea, either going straight back to the UK to Dundee to discharge the jute, or across to the States where we discharged the jute and carpet making. And then we would load grain in a cargo ship and carry it back to the UK. So it was a different way of life, and voyages were about 6 months or so. But yeah, it was a good fun. It was a good start to life, one I've never regretted, and I've been involved with the sea ever since, and in one way or another.
Quite. And then you moved to a company to get into the bunkering world.
Well, that wasn't the intent. It was, I was very happy at sea, and I sailed as second mate, doing the job that I'd really set out to do, which was navigating ships. That was the bit that really interested me. But I thought I was getting itchy, and the grass is always greener on the other side. And I thought I'd go ashore for a couple of years, try it out, then go back to sea, get my master's ticket, and become a crusty old captain. So I actually went into a job as a petroleum surveyor in Kuwait back in '76. But it was an interesting time, but it wasn't for me at the end of the day. And I came back to the UK. I thought, well, I wasn't quite ready to go to sea, and applied for a job I'd gone to a recruiting agency, and they said, well, where do you want to work? I said, anywhere in the world, but not Nigeria or Saudi Arabia. So I ended up in a job in Saudi Arabia. I was there for 7 years with the Yusuf and Ahmed Kanu group, but running the bunkering side of it called Saudi Arabian Bunkers.
I see. And you were in that energy sector for many years.
I was, because from when I came back from Saudi, having been 7 years there, and managing not to be arrested for consumption or having alcohol, etc., I came back to London and joined Mitsubishi Corporation, and worked with them for 5 years, running their European bunkering operation. And then I went down to Singapore for a year and started up what is now World Fuels, was then Transtex bunkering operation in Singapore, and then came back again to London and was with an Italian group, Maxcom Petroli, for the next 15 or so years, with a year break out of that to form another company called Peninsula Petroleum, which again is still doing well. So yes, I had 30 odd years in the bunker industry per se, and it was an interesting time.
I can imagine. And presumably, you were you having to study, or were you able, with your existing qualifications, to do everything as you clearly went up the promotional chain?
It was learning on the job. My studying finished, I think, when I was at Warsash, and managed to pick up an extra couple of O levels. But no, it was. The bunker industry had been around for a while, but one of the things that I did particularly get involved in was the formation of IBIA, the International Bunker Industry Association, and I was the founding chairman there from '93. A group was in fact a chum of mine and myself in '92 in a pub garden in Oxford decided we ought to form some form of trade association, which we did, and I'm pleased to say it's still going strong today. I'm an honorary member, and I still have membership number 1, which is I'm very proud of. They're not getting it back. Yeah.
I'm sure that's true. And then you went on to Crusader Marine after that.
Yeah, I came back, and as I had a really good time with Maxcom, with the Italians, and it was really a mutual agreement that we part company, and they wanted still some representation here. So I formed my own company, Crusader Marine, as a consultancy, ran off the back end of the Maxcom stuff, and then got engaged with a few other organizations. But I suppose the main one, which happened about the same time, I was asked to run Maritime London, trade promotion body for the maritime services of the UK and promoting the UK as a centre of excellence. So I took that on as well, which was a part-time job. But as those of us who've been consultants will know, there's 10 days in every week anyway.
Yes.
So I managed to get involved in all sorts of things in some marine technology, looking at fuel-saving devices, which sadly didn't work. I was involved with a headhunting company at the time, building up a maritime portfolio there. And I was also a director of I'm not a director, I was advisor to a company in Shanghai that was looking at building up a nucleus of maritime expertise in Shanghai throughout that time. So I did that. I was running all of those things until 2017.
Fantastic. And of course, while all of that was going on, Doug, you were for many years fully engaged with the livery organisation, going right back to 1987, when I believe you were admitted to the shipwrights.
That's right. Yes, it was an interesting one that I'd heard about the liveries, and I was interested in a bit in the history of the city, and I was wandering around, and a chum of mine had told me incorrectly that if you want to be a freeman of the City of London, you've got to be a member of a livery company. Well, instead of doing some research, I took that as gospel and got in touch with the only person I happen to know in a livery company. It's a chap called Colin Steele, and as a sideline, funny enough, I found his email just recently, and we've started an email exchange together, and he's 83 now, which is rather fun. But he was the
fantastic
one. He got me into the shipwrights. I didn't know anybody there. I was an interviewed candidate. I managed to get I think it was the secretary of the Baltic Exchange. I had to go and have afternoon tea with him so he could second me. And then I was interviewed and became a shipwright in 87. I went away to Singapore for a year, and then the day I got back was an invitation to join the livery of the company. And so yes, that's my mother livery, of which obviously I'm very proud. But it was a few years later that I was trying to remember earlier whether I'd been out for a very long lunch or it was a good evening session with a great chum of mine, a chap called Duncan Lyon, who sadly is now no longer, but some people may remember him. He was an engineer aboard the Queen Mary at one stage, so
really?
One of life's characters. And a very proud Scot. I think he got 8 children, lived actually just down the road from me here. But we ended up in the Caledonian Club one evening, and let's say it'd been after either lunch or whatever, and bumped into a gentleman by the name of Alan Cahoon, who happened to be a fueler.
Yes.
And so Duncan said, "Oh, Alan is a fueler," and I said, "I've been interested because a lot of colleagues were looking to join a livery company, but the shipwrights wasn't quite right for them. And I'd heard some little bit about the fuelers, didn't know much about them. Anyway, the outcome was that chat with Alan, and bang, I'd suddenly joined the fuelers all of a sudden in 1997, I think it was, and I enjoyed my time there. And by one of the reasons that, and I very quickly ended up on the court because David Waring, who was master around that time, had seen that the company, which was predominantly dominated by the coal transport sector, the coal industry, realized that the company needed to be widened out to the other parts of the industry if it was to survive. Saw something in me that I came from a different sector, but also had quite a long expertise, 10 years or so with an ancient livery, and could bring some of that forward. So I joined the court in 99, and that, funnily enough, was the same year I joined the court of the shipwrights. The difference was I knew I'd joined the shipwrights. I was at a court meeting. I knew nothing about being on the court of the fuelers until about 3 months later, when the clerk said, "Oh, by the way, you're on the court." Oh, thank you very much. So yeah, it was slightly different. We didn't have all the processes that we have today within the company, but it was. And I mean, to me, one of the asides that I enjoy is the fact that the shipwrights is livery number 59 and the fuelers is 95. So
yes,
there's a nice connection, and there has been quite a few shipwrights of our fuelers. Past Master Draffin is a shipwright. Archie Smith is a shipwright.
He is.
And in fact, when I was master fueler, I think about 10% of the fuelers company was from the marine fuels industry.
But you were prime warden of the shipwrights before, as you were progressing through with the fuelers.
No, not at all. No, I became master of the fuelers well before getting prime warden of the shipwrights.
Really? Okay.
I was master fueler in 2003-4. Wasn't master prime warden of the shipwrights till 2015.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yes, so it was
it's the other way round.
Other way around. And at the time, I think I was the youngest master of the fueler, something that past master Joshi constantly reminds me that I'm no longer. He's got that title, I think.
Yeah, yes, I know.
Yeah. But so it was an interesting time. And yeah, we had some fun in those early days of the fuelers. One of the things we started up was the fuelers shoot down in Widden Down in just outside Exeter. I went down with a chum of mine which was the first season of a new shoot, and I thought, well, this would be fun for the fuelers. And so we had the first fuelers game day. I think it was in January 2002 when I was junior warden, and that's been going ever since. And I know that James Hill particularly has carried on running it for a long time after I've done, and but a lot of fuelers came along to that over the years, which was good fun.
I'm sure. And how big was the company at that time?
Numbers escape me on that. It wasn't huge. If I think somewhere around 100 or so. We had the same problem then that we had today of trying to increase our numbers, and how do you go about that? And exactly the same issues that you think, oh, it'd be nice to get some new younger members, but the reality is that the younger members are career building and nest building, and it tends to be more the more aged amongst us that join. But I'm pleased to see in the fuelers actually we do have a huge diversity in across the piece in age and gender and race, etc. So that's a really good thing for a livery company.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And what do you feel were the highlights of your year, Doug, going back to that era?
Well, I mean, it was interesting. I was cogitating last night only that Carrie, our senior warden, is going to induce a new clerk to the company, and then she will have when she becomes master as his clerk. I had the same. We were looking for a clerk in 2002. I was senior warden, and we Strantley Reardon Smith, another shipwright, managed to get the job. It was an interview panel, but yeah, and so we had an agreement there that he would spend a year teaching me to be master, and I'd spend a year teaching him to be clerk. And it really was the blind leading the blind, but we had a great amount of fun, and that was in Richard Budge's time that sort of kicked off, and then Andrew Bainbridge. Highlights of the year? Well, we had a theme for the year, which was the security of British energy supplies. And, I had to do some research because from one sector to see what that meant. And if you look at the Fueler issue 22, I looked it up the other day, I wrote a report on the security of British energy supply and suggesting the diversity of supply that was needed. And so that was certainly an interesting time for me. And a lot of my year was well recorded in the Fueler, and I think the Fueler is a really good journal of record. I think I've got every edition now. I didn't have the originals of every edition, but I've got them all. I know they're all on our website, but they are well worth looking at if you're interested in the history of the company. Highlights. My installation was interesting. We had that at Ironmongers Hall. That was my livery home. That's where the shipwrights lived. And my guest speaker was Sir John Parker, who was also a shipwright. On the shooting, actually, we had the third annual Fuelers Game Day and down in Devon, but we also joined the Interlivery Clay Day, and we won the Past Masters Trophy. But it was only because I'd read the rule book and realised that you only had to have one master in the team, or two masters, which we had, and no one else had read the book, so we won the Horner's Trophy, which was I was a bit disappointed that the shipwrights took it off as the following year, but there we go. prior to me becoming master, we used to have masters at home because many of our masters had rather large gardens, etc., and estates. I didn't have such a thing, so we changed that, and we had a masters away weekend in Kerry, which many will remember. I know Shravan and Mira were on that particular, as well as the goldsmiths, and that was great fun and a bit different. We started off attending the seven-a-side rugby tournament in Twickenham. We visited the Electric Mountain in Dinorvig, which was really interesting as a fuelers visit. We had a ceremony of the keys at the Tower of London, which is something to think about and enjoy. A particular highlight was actually the bringing together of the fuelers and the carmen. We both have a similar background. We come from the same origins, the carmen ourselves, and there'd been a falling out of the companies in the 18th century, serious falling out, killing each other and sort of thing.
And 17th, Doug?
Sorry?
And the 17th century.
Well, yes, I think the fallout was a bit later, but net result is that what then was the Woodmongers Company was no more. And when there was a move to reform the Woodmongers, the carmen went against us in the city. And anyway, fortunately, we did form as the Fuelers Company. But the clerks of the company wouldn't even let the masters speak to each other. There was still quite a bit of hostility. I had met at various functions a senior warden, a chap called Jack Henley, who was senior warden of the Carmen. And we got on particularly well, and we thought this was actually rubbish that the two companies weren't speaking. So we, with the help of their still senior past master, Clive Birch, decided we'd have some sort of event getting together, and we hosted a dinner for the two courts on HQS Wellington. And it was the first Woodmongers Supper. And Clive had rewritten a bit of Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, Pyramus and Thisbe coming together. And Jack and I were the two lovers, and Clive was the wall in the middle. And many who were there will remember it was a great fun evening. And it really was the kickoff of the two companies having a much closer relationship. And I'm delighted about that. And funny enough, I was very, very kind. They invited me to speak at one of their virtual dinners a couple of weeks ago. And so it was interesting to be able to talk to them about that. We joined the Modern Companies Float in the Lord Mayor's Show. And what else did we do? We had military affiliations. Obviously, we still have those today. We visited HMS Sultan. I was a guest of Commodore Mark Slawson, who I'm still in contact with, and presented the Daedalus Trophy. We did flights in the TriStar with 216 Squadron, 80 fuelers on one particular flight.
Good
and
gracious.
we did a bit of we supported the painting of a TriStar refueling over Iraq, and the original was I presented that to 216 Squadron at the time. It was 20 years of service of the TriStar, which was quite fun. And we thought we needed an army affiliation. So we went to I think it was the Grenadier Guards, because they allegedly had the nickname of the coal heavers. We thought that would be a good link. The Grenadier Guards didn't quite see the funny side of that, and decided they didn't want to be affiliated with us. But we started the ball rolling for the Defence Fuels Group, which we're still with today. So yeah, I mean, I had a great time, and obviously during that time also married past master Chloe, and which was quite an event. It's unusual for a master to get married in his year of office.
Indeed, indeed. No, that sounds a fantastic year, Doug. Absolutely tremendous. And while we're talking about the fuelers, have you got any thoughts about how the company should proceed in the coming years?
An interesting challenge. I mean, I think the company has done well over the years. We've grown, we've got a wider circuit, we've got a bit more, we'll continue to engage in the professional side. And I remember a few years ago when we were the only delivery company to contribute to a government white paper on energy, that I think Paul Mott was behind that. As I mentioned earlier, we are a modern company, incredibly diverse. which is really encouraging. I think, you know, we're a standard bearer on diversity for other companies. We're not a rich company, but we have our charitable fund, charitable trust has been a lot more active. Certainly when we became past master and took over running the charitable trust, it hadn't done a lot. We turned it around with the trustees then, and we supported the British Paralympic cycling team in Athens, and they came back with a pile of gold medals, which was good. We adopted the RNLI public servant, the vote in the Thames, and we started the Fuelers Charles Stephenson Trust Prize then. And I was the first of those masters to be jailed for the British Red Cross at the Tower of London. And the Fuelers, yes, good Fuelers, we raised the highest amount, over £4,000 that year. So that's fantastic.
Tremendous.
And you know, we also competed. I didn't compete, but future past master Chloe and others competed in the Inter-Livery Swimathon. It's important to engage with other livery companies and to be, you know, which we do in the pancake race and stuff like that. I think we've got to understand that a livery company is for a wide, diverse range of people. So not everybody is going to attend every function. Yes, a lot of people will enjoy the dinners, but other people enjoy the less formal social events. Some of them are there because of the professional lectures, etc. we get. So, and I think we've got a good range of those. I'm pleased to see that we now have a more proactive communications in terms of the Fuelers publications that are coming out, the Fuelers lectures, stuff like that. I think that's
comms group.
The comms group, absolutely. You know, a new website coming out. You've got to have a new website every few years, but you know, it's proactive with a purpose, with a reason to widening and increasing the numbers in the company. But I think we also have to be realistic about who will join, and it's been a difficult year for livery companies, because why would somebody want to join something where they can't go to any of the dinners in their first year? But we're coming out of that, and you know, I know Carrie's got some ideas, and you know, she's going to have a task of bringing the company out from COVID, you know, and really with their team then and getting that engaged. So that's good. But I think it's good that the company still engages with the industry. I think there is an area where we ought to be getting members to consider a bit more, and that's joining the corporation, being engaged in the governance of the city. At the moment, you've got both Sharon and myself, our common councillors, but I will probably drop off the perch there next year. And I think it's important that the Fuelers are represented. We've got the new honorary liveryman, Alderman Gowman, who will be potentially Lord Mayor in a little while in the energy sector. That's fantastic. But I think it's giving service back to the city in a different way that members of the livery ought to consider whether they've got time to engage with the corporation. Because it's so important going forward.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to move on to this area, Doug, because while you've had all of this activity with the Fuelers through the years, and indeed the shipwrights, you engaged with the city around 2007, did you not?
Yeah, that's right. But I think just dropping back to one point first about what the livery should be looking at the future. Can we stop reviewing standing orders? We were reviewing that in my year as master. I think really we ought to get a very flexible. I know that's being worked on hard, but let's get something that we can just live with and stop reviewing standing orders. I can assure you that shipwrights have done it once in X hundred years. So, but no, seriously, going back to the city, I became a common councilman by accident. There was no intent. I was running Maritime London at the time, and our president, Bruce Farthing, was a member of the Common Council and used to chatter about it occasionally, and I didn't really know much about it. And then sadly he passed away, and there was a vacancy in the ward of Aldgate. The board of Maritime London felt that I should stand for that election, because they felt there should be a maritime and Aldgate traditionally known as a maritime ward, although it's much more insurance these days. And so I stood, but much to my surprise, so did three others. I thought, well, I didn't really want to join it anyway. We're used to this sort of canvassing and things like that, but managed to win that election. I think it was either by 7 or 11 votes, whatever it was. Not a huge vote, but yes. And then, in fact, the next elections we weren't even contested, which was rather fun. So yeah, it's been interesting. But my first committee, the ward deputy at the time said, you can go on planning and transportation. I said, well, I don't know anything about planning and transportation. He said, well, you'll learn. Okay, and off I went, and funny enough, I'm now back on it again. Yeah, I was on various committees, City Lands, which doesn't exist anymore. Policy and Resources Committee I was on for about 8 years. And for a couple of years, I was one of the deputy chairmen there. And that was interesting. So I was became on the board of City UK, and also was on the Hospitality Working Party. But other things I've done, I've been on the board of 2 schools, Freeman School and King Edward School down in Wickley, trustee of those. Spent some time, 4 years on the licensing committee, a year on the finance committee, actually on the audit side. But I suppose that the one that I've enjoyed and I've put most into has been the Police Authority Board, which I joined in 2010. And chaired that from 2016 to 2020.
This is a very responsible job, Doug, because as many people know, the City of London Police do specialist work, do they not, in terms of fraud and finance?
Yeah, I mean, they've got, if you like, 2 major roles. One is keeping the city safe, and that's across the piece from terrorist attacks, etc. And the city is, don't forget, is the residents, the businesses, and the visitors. So that's it. It's local domestic role, if you like. But then we have the secondary role, which is that we're the City of London Police are the national lead force for economic crime, and they have a national role in that, running action, fraud, etc. So yeah, it is quite a big area, and with staffing of somewhere around 1,400 in total. But it's a very diverse force. They cover most of the things that other forces do. Public order, looking after things like the Lord Mayor's show and stuff like that. There's looking after all of the heritage and the pomp and circumstance of the city, making sure that's safe. To counter-terrorism, to roads policing across the piece. So a well-respected force that works particularly well with the Met. A very, very good working relationship with the 2 forces that work side by side, have different areas of control, but the key now on the national side is the economic crime and the cyber crime, and in fact the Commissioner has the national lead on those as well. So yeah, it was and it's, you've got to be aware, I became deputy chairman, and you do 3 years as deputy chairman, then 4 years as chairman, then a year as deputy chairman. So it's an 8-year stint, if you like, and but you're elected annually. So if you cock up, you out, if you like. But I also had the joy of chairing the Safer City Partnership, which is pulling together the other. It's a statutory requirement for the corporation to have a community safety partnership agreement, but it brings together the ambulance service, London Fire Brigade, the probation service, the other areas, and I've been chairman of that. I've just finished now for 5 years, but we've just changed that a bit and pushed that more into the community and children's services sector as opposed to the policing. The police will still have an engagement in it, but that's been quite fun. And one of the other things that again is happening at the moment is we're building a new complex, which is the courts and the police and the commercial sector. And so I'm engaged on the Capitol buildings looking at that development, which won't be around until 2025, I think, or maybe a bit later, but it will be a fantastic development when it's all approved and goes through in Salisbury Square.
And tell me, Doug, you were saying to me recently that you're going to step down next year from being, is that a common councillor? Is that what you're...
it's my intent at the moment that I will have done 15 years. I've had a lot of fun. I think I've done 5 state banquets I've had the pleasure of going to. I chaired the one for the Emir of Qatar, which was great fun. You're chairing a 700 people party on behalf of the nation. Wow. I mean, it was a great evening, despite the fact that the Lord Mayor at the time was Nick Anstey. When it was being introduced to the Emir at the beginning, he said, well, this is Doug Barrow, chairman of the committee. And if it's a success this evening, I'm the Lord Mayor of the city. And if it's a disaster, this is Doug Barrow. But that sets the tone. These things can be a lot of pomp, state trumpeters, etc. But there's some informality as well. But no, I've done 15 years. I've got other things that I want to do. You've got to remember this is a voluntary commitment.
Yes, it is.
We are the only corporation, local authority, where the councillors are not paid in the country. And we still maintain our independence, which I think is really important. But yes, it's enjoyable, and I'm still enjoying it. I've just now gone on to a working party looking at the statues in Guildhall, 2 of which are of former slave traders, and making some recommendations to the court as to what we should be doing about those. And as many others are looking at various statues and seeing what can be done about them.
I see. So from this, I sense that, in fact, you may be stepping down from one role, but you will be continuing your city connections and committee work by the sounds of things. Well,
no. Once I come off the corporation, then I'll come off any of those committees. So those,
really,
they're all separate. I mean, I will still connect with the city, of course, through the fuelers and shipwrights, and possibly sort of various functions at the corporation if I'm invited. Running of the city or engaged in running and oversight of the city will be left to others. But so I'm 90% sure I'm going to step down. Things might change, I may stay on, but I'm not really looking forward to doing another 4 years.
Indeed. So you obviously have some thoughts on how you want to spend your time in the future, Doug, because stepping away from these various responsibilities is going to leave you with plenty of time.
Be good to have some time for me, wouldn't it? Yeah, I mean, great. I've got a 2-year-old grandson that I'm missing, as many of us are. Amanda, my partner, she's got 2 grandchildren en route. So I look forward to spending some time with them. And interesting, during this time of enforced lack of travel into London, Amanda thought I would really miss it all, but actually I've been very fortunate. I've done it all. I've attended the state banquets, the delivery dinners, etc., etc. And I'm quite happy to do some other things. So I've got personal interests. I still enjoy cooking a lot, which you can see from my girth, but some other sort of habits. And we're thinking that we might make a move, maybe down to the Isle of Wight, but spending some time with the family. But I'm still engaged in matters maritime. We do a bit of consultancy, look at some projects in the Middle East at the moment, and 1 or 2 other things going on. So I don't think I should be bored.
I'm sure you won't, Doug. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. I'm sure that the members are going to be totally enthralled with what you've said over the past 3/4 of an hour or so. I'm really grateful for your time, and I wish you well in the future. And I'm glad to hear that you're going to stay very strongly connected with the fuelers in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
It's been fun. It's lovely talking to you, Michael, and I think it's great that we're getting some of this oral history of the company recorded, and I'm pleased to see others have also spoken, because I think it's very important when people in the future want to look back and see what happened, to have some of that record there. But it has been a real pleasure and an honour, and I'm a very proud fueler. I've enjoyed it immensely, and will continue to do so, and really looking forward to getting out and about to more fueler functions and seeing Carrier's master and yourself in due course after that. So looking forward to the future. I know the company is in good hands.
Well, that's tremendous, Doug. Thank you for the kind words. Much appreciated.
Michael, you're welcome. Take care.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.
That's lovely, Doug.